Dear friends, welcome to this first module of the workshop. In this, we ask a very fundamental question as to why surgeons should undertake or know about research. For you to understand this, we have to go back to where we stand in the world as individuals and as surgeons. Thomas Friedman, a very well-known economist, wrote a book called The World is Flat. He talked about a level playing field where you have the opportunities and that makes you feel equal to anybody else in the world. And he made the point that it brings responsibilities as well with it. What prompted him was a visit to Bangalore, where he found the thriving um, IT industry and felt that the north-south divide, which was very common in the world of say 30 years ago, doesn't exist anymore. Now, if we look at our field, surgery, can we really say this about Indian surgery? Are we really on par with everybody else in the world? In pockets, yes. But if you take the whole national scenario in terms of the way we approach surgery, I'm not sure that we measure up completely with the rest of the world, but our goal must be to do so. Why do I say this? It may sound very unpatriotic when I say that we really don't measure up. But look at this simple statistics. This was a study done by one of our DNB students. We form nearly 18% of the world's population. We have 75,000 surgeons. And we all know that Indian surgeons are very busy operating. Now look at our contribution to the world surgical literature. You looked at the top 10 journals as far as their impact factor goes. You will know what impact factor is further on during the day. But I've shown you the examples of the top 4, and you can see that out of thousands of articles that are published in the world on subject of surgery, we have 1, 2, or at the most 27 articles published. By all logical counts, we should be producing about 20% of the world's surgical literature. Look at our own surgery, our own flagship journal, Indian Journal of Surgery. Only half of our articles are from this country, and we take the rest of it from elsewhere. And it's not a policy of the journal to encourage foreign contribution. It's just that the submissions we get are a lot more from abroad than it is from our own country. We are far behind even China in our scientific publication. We produce less than 30% of papers that China produces. And look at the statistics. 57% of our medical institutions haven't had a single publication. These are temples of learning, and not one publication from our medical institutions. These are hard facts. We may find it very difficult to believe it, and one may feel that I'm nitpicking or I'm criticizing our teaching institutions. I'm not. It's just that these are all true facts. And so when you're looking at the goals of surgical training, and I mentioned this in the module on introduction, we need to have safe, thinking, and ethical surgeons. And to do that, we must, as teachers and you as students, must understand that there are different levels of learning. And for a surgeon, it is important that you're looking at deep and strategic learning, not surface learning, which is what is prevalent at the school stage. But as adult learners and as people with a professional outlook, we need to have an interest in the subject. We must desire to succeed and desire to have high grades. And this competition that we talk about is with oneself. You're not competing with necessarily with somebody else. It's a very healthy attitude where you compete with yourself to do your best. And when we learn as adults, we learn in ways which are very different from what youngsters do. For our learning to succeed, it must be perceived as relevant. And this is very, very important to understand, because I think that at the moment, research is not considered relevant to a surgical trainee. And that is where the challenge is. We have to understand that we have to have some knowledge of research to be good surgeons. We participate very little. When we ask for questions and answers, you find that in India particularly, very few people ask questions. It's not that they have understood everything, they just hesitate to express themselves, possibly because they feel that they may make fools of themselves. But I think it is a bigger problem when you leave a given teaching session without understanding what is being said. So please get over this inhibition and ask questions, participate, give your opinion, and do not underestimate yourself. And of course, it must be focused on problems. Whatever we do, we learn better if we focus on the subject concerned and go deep into it. So problem-oriented learning is another new thing, not very new, as you can see. It was first described a century and a half ago, but somehow we don't seem to give too much attention to it, and I believe that we should. It's not difficult to practice. In short, what it means is that, take research for example. The way we have designed this workshop is to actually give you some information, but make it yourself. Learn things yourself through actually doing things like a literature search. And so when you have a problem, the problem is to get evidence, for example, and find the right kind of pictures, the right kind of references. If you focus on the problem and find solutions, your learning will be much better, and you will understand this better as you progress through the day. And as teachers, we do not spoon feed at this level of training. We are basically guides who set goals, suggest sources of knowledge, and promote discussion. And I say the best way to go through this process of learning, be it a core surgical subject or be it something like research that you're doing today, you must have an amalgamation of the traditional didactic lecture. That's what I'm doing just now. Keep it short and then go on to giving you a problem-oriented, hands-on experience. And that way, we hope that you will learn the best. And there's a paradigm shift now from a teacher-centered learning to a learner-centered learning. And as I mentioned earlier, we are nothing more than facilitators. The point I'm trying to make here is that you have to put in a lot of effort for learning. Our job is to just show you the way. And in surgical training, apart from the clinical training, which is going on very well, my contention is that we should be looking at least clinical research, if not basic research. Clinical research takes several forms, and what we will be talking about is mostly procedure trials and a little bit about clinical audit today. In postgraduate training, I reiterate, is a training where we highlight controversies. Please understand that a lot of things are not just black and white, and that's where your evaluation of other views, acceptance of other views has to come in force, which essentially means that our present form of training and evaluation, where an examiner expects something from you, and if you say that, you pass, and if you don't say that, you fail, is something which is very simplistic. What should happen is that we must evaluate a student to see whether he really has analytical capability. And even if you say something that is not to our satisfaction, if he can justify his statements, then he deserves a pass. And that is the kind of thinking that all of us must have. And so I touched on this subject earlier in the introduction. Please remember that you need an overall development as a surgeon, and just doing surgery is not enough. You need to learn a lot of things like communication skills, management, finances, human resources, you name it, and you have to learn. And through your own efforts and through the guidance from your seniors, you can achieve all that. When we are training a surgeon, a scientific surgeon, what are we aiming at? In your so-called clinical research kind of module, that's what we are talking about today. We look at the capacity to collate and analyze clinical facts, and that is an important skill that you need to have, and that has to be done in a very structured manner. What is important is that while doing research, you will learn to document work, and that's a lot of discipline that goes behind it. You improve your own standards. You'll be a confident surgeon who conforms to international standards. You learn to be extremely objective about what you say and what you do. And undoubtedly, when you audit your work and when you audit your own outcomes, you will have tremendous self-improvement. It is interesting what people have observed about why we have to do research. In an editorial, one of our leading thinkers of Indian origin who lives and works in the UK made this very simple observation that without inquiring minds, medicine will come to a standstill. And the important point that robust research tools needed to evaluate one's own practice. Forget about, as I said, writing path-breaking research and becoming a great researcher. But even if you want to be an average clinician, a reasonably good clinician, you must have some knowledge of research tools, and this workshop aims to do that for you. Martin Shine wrote this beautiful article in the BJS of year 2000, where for the whole year you have 12 articles on various aspects of research methodology. Even though it is 19 years old, the basic tenets remain the same, and I would urge you to read those 12 articles. He said that altruistic motives are also there in research, in doing research, which means you want to disseminate knowledge, you want to have some speciality even in the research field. That's what's meant by research selectivity. But of course, if you are looking at egoistic or personal motives, professional promotion, making a name, becoming famous, and developing professional contacts is also important. In our country, I think financial gain is an impossibility if you are a researcher. So by and large, what I have tried to convey to you is that for you to be a well-rounded, completely trained, safe, good surgeon, you need to have some knowledge of research. And this workshop aims to give you an exposure to that. Thank you very much.